Good evening from Japan, and welcome back to Scott Webinars. We are video again with Scott Volume 80 that is going to be one of our very important and interesting topics about the sustainability measurement and metrics. Without further ado, I'm going to invite the president of SCOT, Professor Jafar Jafari, to enlighten us with the opening remark. Dr. Jafar, floor is yours. Your mic is off, Dr. Jafar.
Thank you, Dr. Kazim. Good afternoon from Spain. I'm also very pleased to be with you, with colleagues and the audience on this occasion. I think the first sentence of the abstract of the webinar says it all. It says, how do we measure sustainability in ways that are practical, meaningful, and responsive to the realities of each destination? This is a very impactful statement, and I hope we can deliver various aspects of it. What is very of importance to me, particularly, is the practical aspects of research. In the past years, we have been always emphasizing theory making, conceptual frameworks, etc. And in the meantime, we have forgotten about the needs of the tourism industry. And the knowledge is not readily transferred to the industry where the uses of it can be. And I like the end of the first sentence, each destination. If we really think about it, majority of the destinations in the world are small destinations, not large destinations. So it's a topic that deals with reality, and this reality needs to be transferred to the uh, to the tourism industry. I know this is not one of the goals. Transfer of knowledge is not one of the goals of this particular webinar, but I hope your comments would lead us in that direction, because after all, we need to have uh, our knowledge benefit the sustainability and advancement of the tourism industry. I'm here to learn. I'm not here to lecture, because that is not a topic in which I have expertise. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jafar. As Jafar mentioned, today's webinar is focusing on sustainable tourism and the metrics and the indicators. Today's webinar is moderated by Dr. Mustafa. As you can see in our website, Dr. Mustafa is a Vice Chancellor, Professional Research Fellow, Professor of Sustainable Tourism, with about 25 years academic and non-academic experience. Before joining academia, he has worked for more than 10 years in local government and municipalities of historical and touristic destinations in Iran, and has heavily involved in destination planning and management. His research interest area contains sustainable tourism, heritage tourism, community development, and urban sustainability. He has published a lot, more than 150 articles, books, and book chapters, including publishing in A-ranking journals. I know Dr. Mustafa is very famous, and he doesn't need introducing or introduction here. I did it shorter as you requested, Dr. Mustafa. I'm going to pass it on to you to moderate the panel, and we are eager to listen and learn from you. Dr. Mustafa, floor
Thank
is
you
yours.
very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Kazem and Prof. Jafar, for the opportunity for this webinar. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone, from wherever you are. I'm from Perth, Australia, so here is evening, almost night. And so welcome to this webinar from around the world. It's my pleasure to moderate and chair this important webinar that we are going to talk about sustainability measurement in destination. The topic of webinar is Beyond Metrics, Rethinking Sustainability Indicators for Tourism Destination. And we are going actually to discuss about the big question that Prof. Jafari mentioned, that how can we measure tourism sustainability, but in a way that are practical, meaningful, and relevant to individual destination. So we know each destination has its own characteristic, and sustainability from other side is the very long standing topic we discuss for decades about sustainability. But we know if we cannot measure, so we cannot achieve. If we cannot monitor, it's very difficult to achieve. So this is the role of sustainability indicator that help destination with different characteristic to monitor the process of achieving sustainability. We have a lot of different framework for measuring and monitoring sustainability of destination. Uh, mm, Different sets of indicators and indices. Uh, in academia, there are a lot of work that have been focused on developing this type of indicators and indices. In practice, in different level, in international organization, in national level, some country, and even in local level, some destination, they develop their own indicator for measuring sustainability. But there are a lot of challenges and different destinations struggling with some big challenges about data, about compatibility of indicator to characteristic of each destination. So this is the aim of this webinar, to discuss the roots of and the reason and necessity of sustainability indicators for destination. So how should we design and develop destination to be place-based and based on content of characteristic of each destination, and how those indicator and the outcome that we can get from sustainability indicator can inform policy and practice. So this is the main agenda that we have for this webinar. We have very experienced people, researcher from academia, and very experienced people from industry and practice. And we hope at the end of this webinar, we can have some great idea, especially for destination, to see how they can overcome their challenges that they have for measuring sustainability. They love sustainability at, and they want to achieve sustainability, but probably we can have some sort of discussion that provides some guideline for destination in this path. So we will start with Dr. Ana Torres Delgado. Anna is an associate professor in the Department of Geography at the University of Barcelona. Her expertise focuses on the development of indicators and indices. I remember I think when I started to work on indicator and indices, I cited Anna's work. I think one of the work that I cited was 2012 or something. And yeah, and she worked a lot on this area. Her career combined applied research, knowledge transfer, and social impact, providing tools and evidence to address sustainability challenges in tourism and spatial planning. She teaches tourism geography at undergraduate and postgraduate level and published in leading top tier and Q1 journal in urban tourism governance, sustainability, and tourism impact assessment, and has participated in competitive national and European research projects. She actively promotes knowledge transfer through collaboration with public administration. Anna, over to you.
Thank you, Professor Mustafa. So I'm going to try to share my screen so I can start my presentation. Let's see if it works. Can you see it?
Perfect. Yes.
Okay. So first of all, thank you very much to Scott for inviting me to share my experience and to contribute to this panel. I will be focusing on sustainable tourism indicators for better evidence informed policy. So today I want to focus on the next step. So what's next? And once we have the sustainable tourism indicators, how we turn them into actual action. So I will provide just in a quick presentation from a destination perspective, a quick overview of the main limitations in using these sustainable tourism indicators for decision making. And also I will introduce some strategies in order to overcome this data action gap that we can identify in between having the data and then using the data for actual policies. And I want to specifically focus on this challenge because we have many experiences. We have worked with many destinations that are mastering in measuring sustainable tourism indicators. But at the same time, we can see much less evidence on the use of these indicators to inform policies, and even less examples or experiences in monitoring the results from the specific policies or strategies that has been drafted based on the indicators. So that's why I would like to introduce briefly with this diagram, what is this data action gap? And as you will see here, this diagram explains the learning journey through which organizations and also institutions acquire, assimilate, transform, and exploit knowledge. So as you will see here, we have two big stages. We have the information stage and then the knowledge stage. And in between these two stages, we have the evidence gap. So as you can see here, these areas are the number of experiences of each of these stages. So as we can see, the first stage, which is the acquisition stage, this first step is when we define the list of indicators to our destinations, and then we move on to the assimilation step, where we measure the indicator. So we have the data, we understand the data, and we interpret the information. And from here, we have fewer experiences in how to produce knowledge from these indicators and how we can use them to change things, to improve our management and in the planning in our destinations. And these steps in this knowledge stage are critical because it's not enough to have a really good data or enough data or indicators if we cannot use them to create knowledge and to inform our policies. So as you can see, the process, so the problem with the process is we have this data action gap. And this is because this process is not linear, it's not rational, but it's complex. And that means that decisions and how we create these actions or strategies on sustainability in our destinations are not just based on indicators or in data. There are also various interests, values, ideologies, stakeholders, and institutional frameworks that are influencing our decision making. So based on the research that is conducted with DMOs and experience with different administrations, we can identify in general several general limitations in the use of indicators in policymaking. And we can say here you have the main ideas. So the most common limitations are that we have indicators that are not relevant for current policies sometimes. Also, we have a lack of human resources, or sometimes a lack of expertise on understanding the meaning of indicators and how to connect this information or this knowledge to specific or related strategies or actions to change things in our destinations. It is also sometimes difficult to understand the results or the methodologies, unclear needs or priorities when using this information, and sometimes also limited ideas for alternatives to change our current business model. But the main limitation that I would like to highlight is the problem that more often than not, sustainability data is seen as a threat. And it's seen as a threat because when we talk about sustainability, we are challenging the prevalent growth mindsets. And when it happens, when the data user experience this threat, then our sustainable tourism indicators are dismissed and decisions are based again in experience or intuition. And this is quite normal because the fact sustainability, when we try to introduce sustainability in management or in planning of tourism, it means that we have to consider new factors to measure the tourism success. So till now, the main idea is to measure tourism success based on economic factors. When we introduce sustainability, we break these patterns and we have to change the way of working. So it means that it will be a critical challenge in introducing these new ways of understanding tourism success. So what we can do to better absorb the knowledge that is provided from sustainable tourism indicators to break or to overcome these limitations. We can define 3 main mechanisms. First, we have to work on formal and informal learning. Second, we have to disrupt prevalent mindsets, so growth mindsets. And we have also to work to make the data more relevant for policymaking and also to provide some clarity to better understand and to make easier the effort to embed this information into our decision making. So specifically talking about formal and informal learning, in general, we are more used to talk about formal learning as a way of training in data interpretation and dissemination for better communicate and to understand indicators. So we are promoting the acquisition of new skills to understand relevant data and so on. So this is quite usual strategy. But we have also to bear in mind that informal learning is also super important in order to create community. Because community, when we talk about sustainability, empower decision makers and data producers on breaking patterns. And this is critical for changing and for embedding sustainability in decision making. So for example, some strategies are creating events or conference around sustainability best practices that could be shared among people working on data use or data production is very important. And obviously this kind of events promotes talking with peers or these peer-to-peer discussions, these social interactions that are very important to create this community that makes easier to learn and to gain confidence to change the status quo. So these conversations with peers will help us to motivate destinations to go further and to change easily things. Next mechanism is disrupting prevalent mindsets. Here we have to bear in mind that that growth is still the prevalent mindset and the sustainability challenge it. This is the baseline. So we need to look for strategies to foster new ways of thinking to break these prevalent mindsets. And some strategies that we have tested with experiments and that seems to be very useful to disrupt this status quo are, for example, referring indicators. So for example, we experienced cross-referring traditional key performance indicators, such as tourist expenditure, with new sustainable indicators. So for example, carbon footprint. So if we, with this example, if we cross-refer tourist expenditure and carbon footprint per markets, is a good way to show or to build a cost-benefit analysis that could foster different ways of thinking, innovative thinking, so we can sparkle some new strategies or actions to still continue improving the economic values, but at the same time reducing the environmental impact. And also, something that we are not very used to do is to monitor the strategies that we implement actually based on the indicators. So the monitoring the success of the sustainable tourism strategies informed by our sustainable tourism indicators is very important, because it's a way to validate the usefulness of these tools to improve the management and the planning in our destination. So we have to create this kind of monitoring our actions. And finally, another mechanism that we have identified as very important is to make the data relevant. So we have to make the data relevant for policy making. Otherwise, we have a list of extensive indicators, but then none of them are used to change things or to create new policies. And here, to achieve a data relevance, is very important to have feedback between data producers and data users, because feedback is important to align indicators to policy aims and local context. And when data producers receive feedback from the decision makers, it's easier to align the data collections and the indicators production to tourism policy aims. And this way, it's easier to create really relevant indicators to use when policy making. Next, it is also to make the data clear. So for clarity in data, we must minimize the effort in assimilating data. So that means we have to show the data, to communicate the data in an easy way, because decision makers are not scientists. So we have to make them, we have to reduce the effort for data users or decision makers to understand it, as it is easier for them to embed in decision making if they can understand it quickly and easily. So here we experience that, for example, progress or trends reports, benchmarking among destinations, indices, or axes as a visual tools are very effective in this way of minimizing the effort. And this is aligned with the next idea, which is reducing the choice overload, because many times we focus on producing a lot of indicators, but then we are just using a few of them. So we identified also that working with a small number of indicators could be a small number, but relevant indicators could be more efficient approach to inform decisions, especially when we are in these initial stages of policy making or introducing sustainability in our policies or decision making strategies. Yeah, so in short, the conclusion would be that we need to advance from this raw data to this indicator building, but eventually we have the last chance that we have, a difficult one, is to turn these indicators into knowledge to make better decisions. So here I will say that is the future challenge for indicators in our sector. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Anna, for very insightful presentation. We will back to you, and we will discuss around this chain that you mentioned, from data to indicator to knowledge, and so how this can happen in practice. You mentioned that this maybe is one challenge that we have in this area. So we'll back and discuss about this in Q&A or panel discussion section. Second presenter for today or tonight's webinar is Claudia Bastinza. Sorry. Claudia brings over 15 years of experience designing and operationalizing sustainable tourism system across public and private sector. Claudia actually represents GDS Global Destination Sustainability Movement, and she's the lead of project lead for GDS Index at GDS Movement for measuring sustainability of destination. She drives global sustainability improvement program, enabling destination to measure, manage, and enhance sustainability performance. Her background spans government, strategy, certification, and assurance at the Global Sustainable Tourism Council. So we have Mihi, next presenter from GSTC. So it's good alignment. And consultancy supporting destination transformation. Claudia specialized in translating multidimensional indicators into actionable insight, strengthening data-driven decision-making, and aligning stakeholders to advance the credible, transparent approaches to measuring sustainability of destination. Claudia's floor is yours.
Thank you, Professor, and thank you for bringing in this panel. I will start sharing my screen. Just give me a minute, please. And yeah, can you see my screen now? All right. Thank you, Anna, for your presentation. Is everything work?
Yes, fantastic.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Anna, for your presentation. Building on that, I will share how this translates into the practice, and for that, I will take you through the GDS index. And here we are talking about global indicators. We are all familiar with different frameworks that exist worldwide for tourism sector and the different ways to implement this at local level. Before starting with that, let's just briefly introduce the GDS movement. The GDF movement works with destinations from different size and from different stages of development, from early stages to developing process and mature destinations. And we support them in this sustainability journey and how to improve their performance. There are different pathways. The main focus for today is the GDS index and how the indicators within the index have been supporting these destinations since 2016 when the index was released. It has been almost 10 years now, and we have been working with destinations worldwide. The GDS index is a performance improvement program. We support destinations, helping understand where are the gaps, where do they need to focus to start at the very beginning with the low-hanging fruit and then move on in different steps. Also, as part of the index, we have the element of comparison, and this is the benchmarking that is one of the key elements within the index. The index helps destinations to compare against each other, but also it's crucial to notice that the index allows destinations to compare themselves through the years, because every year they submit this evidence in compliance to the indicators within the index that we will see in the next slide. And this allows them to identify how they are progressing, how they are moving year by year, and where they need to introduce further improvement, where they are doing okay, or to who they should be collaborating. We work worldwide with many destinations around, from mostly in Europe, but recently we have been working with new destinations in Latin America, and that has helped in understand the different contexts and how indicators, as much as we want them to be completely flexible, sometimes there are different contexts and challenges in regions that they need to be considered when we have these global indicators and then move into the local action. GDS index has become into a global community of destinations, and all the destinations participating in the index has these criteria as a baseline, and they start working on strengthening the different actions. They identify gaps and they collaborate, they co-create, although they compete within the benchmarking element that the index has. They learn from their peers, and they also understand the differences between learning from the peers, and we have seen this in the previous presentation from Anna, and how to adapt. The indicator doesn't need to be translated exactly for every single destination, because there are different sizes, there are different stages of progress, there are different challenges as well. And the benchmark progress go in two directions. Is the benchmarking against destinations near them, against destinations that might be in the similar size, and also the benchmarking year by year, as I mentioned it before. The GDS index is organized in 4 performance sections, covering environmental, social, the supplier structure, and destination management. In total, we have 74 qualitative and quantitative criteria. And here what we distinguish is that when we work in sustainability in tourism, we go beyond tourism itself. We also look into the city and the climate action level for the city, and that's what the environmental performance cover areas that the city work, and how the DMO in this case, which is related to the tourism itself, need to collaborate with the city, with environmental departments. If we go into the social performance, then we're talking about all different aspects of accessibility, resident engagement, alignment with sustainable development goals. And now in the 4 other 2 columns about supplier performance is the direct connection to the supply chain, the hotel, the airports, the restaurants, the academia, that is also fundamental. And then in the destination management performance is where is the key element of how the DMO is acting internally in terms of sustainability, and also how they are collaborating with the other partners, with the other stakeholders, how they are co-creating with the supply chain as well. And now moving into the key, why the indicators needs to go beyond measurement. Indicators by themselves, they cannot create anything. The data need to be interpreted, and that's what we have been also seeing from the academia perspective. The evidence needs to be there, and it needs to be analyzed. The findings, when we talk about the findings, is where we need to connect the dots. The evidence is there, but then in the findings, we need to figure out if these indicators are connected to the strategy, to a master plan, probably or to a climate and adaptation master plan from the city, to the department focusing on accessibility or social inclusion. And then we have the improvement. Here is the challenge is that it's not only about measuring, is how the information can be used, how the destination can translate all the evidence they have, and they align with the indicator. So the indicator can be the baseline. The indicator can give you all the resources. Then is how you translate that and how do you use it into your destination. Here we can see within the index these 10 years since the starting of the index, how destinations participating in the index has been improving their performance year by year. Some of years, as you can see, 2019 and all what we have the COVID, they have challenges in each destination, but they continue to do this progress. And some of them start with baby steps, some of them start moving faster. But overall, we see that the index and the indicators help them to identify the gaps, help them to see where they need to move on, see to who they need to collaborate with. And for this is where we can see that this long-term progress that indicators can support, and each destination work at their own local structure. We have also seen through all these active collaboration with destinations, continuity progress is not about a linear progress. The indicators can be also interpreted and supported as a stair. Is more about this constant progress, and from benchmarking, as we can see here, we can move to the second stage of strategize, and then we can probably go into the third part about capacity building and storytelling. And then some of the destinations are moving to certification, but that shouldn't be the end stage, because they need to continue this progress year by year or every 2-3 years. And here is where this continuous journey helps these destinations to implement the indicators. Now moving into a very specific case, and we have done research with University of Exeter last year related to indicators. The GDS index, as I have shown you before, it has 74 criteria, and probably that could be, as Anna mentioned before, this choice of overload with the gaps. And that's why we decide to go very deep in details with University of Exeter and try to figure out how these indicators within the index are connected to each other, because we can see that indicators cannot be analyzed or implemented in silos. They sit within a destination system. It could be governance, could be funding, partnerships, capacity, different types, but all of them work within a system. The question also that usually is raised in DMOs is who needs to act? Sometimes the DMO go back and says, I don't have the capacity to do everything. And the DMO doesn't need to do everything, but they can influence some action. They can collaborate with others. And we have developed a bigger GDS index system map connecting the 74 criteria, but here is just a snapshot of one of the criteria and how these, for example, community engagement, connect to other criteria within the index. And this has been validated with the destinations participating in the index. For example, and the colors that you see here, for example, yellow is because our social performance section is colored yellow. The blue section is our destination performance section, and the little green, light green, is the supplier section, and the green one, the dark green, is the environmental. And we can see how these indicators connect to each other. And for example, the DMO might not have direct influence in the community engagement because probably that belongs to the city and different departments involved. But if we look into reporting framework or performance communication, there are the blue indicators that are under control by the DMO. They might be able to do or implement interventions that generate this reaction to monitor events, to monitor tourism, that in the end can affect, and we can have this ripple effect into community engagement. And that's why this matters, because indicators can show the challenge, and when we connect one to each other, we can understand how they are, how is the bigger gap probably, or where do we need to move on Having this interconnected map has also helped us to identify there are different journeys. We have seen that there are destinations of different size, but at the same time, there are destinations of different journeys. And we have early stage destinations that the indicators help them to first understand the baseline and then move into identifying priorities, probably the low-hanging fruit. Then we have other group of destinations that are the developing one. There are ones that are already passing the early stage. They are strengthening evidence, probably focusing more on governance. They have identified that with minimum resources, they probably need to focus on very specific areas at the first or second year, or stakeholders coordination. And then we have the mature destinations. That doesn't mean that they don't need to evolve. They need to continue this sustainability journey. They probably need to refine strategies, address different challenges that might come into place. And here the indicators help in a different way. But we can see here that all three different journeys respond to a group of indicators, but in different ways. And I would like to finish this with the indicators are not only to measure, they are also elements that can help in the learning, in the decision making, and they can help us to ask key questions. What are we learning? What we need to change? Who needs to act? And the connection that we have seen with the index system map that we have worked with University of Exeter has helped us understand better who is behind those actions and how the DMO can identify the indicators that they can control and versus the indicators that they can influence. And probably in those ones, they need to collaborate with other stakeholders. And that will be all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claudia. Very interesting perspective, and it's very good to hearing from practice that was happening in the different destinations. We will discuss later. So if we look at Anna's perspective, we try to reduce number of indicator and we just small group of indicator can be meaningful, but from Claudia perspective and practice, we have 74 indicators for different aspects. And so will be very interesting to have this discussion later that how these different perspectives can be converged and can actually feed each other to have best practice for destination. So the next one, we are going to Dr. Mi Kong. Dr. Mi Kong representing GSTC, Global Sustainable Tourism Council, and she serves as the Chief Assurance Officer at the GSTC and also work as a trainer and destination assessor. Since earning her PhD in ecotourism from Seoul National University in 1999, she has taught and researched ecotourism and sustainable tourism at various universities. And as the first person to earn a PhD in ecotourism in South Korea and the recipient of UNESCO Man and Biosphere Reserve Young Scientist Award in 2000, she has devoted over 30 years to sustainable tourism policy and development. Her work includes establishing tourism standard and certification, as well as conducting sustainability assessment for various destinations in South Korea and beyond. So we learn from Dr. Mi and see what's happening in GSTC and what can bring to this webinar to discuss our future for measuring sustainability of destination. Okay, over to you, Dr. Mahi.
Okay, while you are sharing my
Yes.
presentation, I will start. Yeah. Good morning, afternoon, and evening to everyone joining us today. Thank you very much for the great the opening presentation, Professor Anna and also Claudia. Your points are overlapping with what I am going to present. Over the past decades, we have witnessed an explosion of sustainability indicators, frameworks, and academic models. Logically, this should mean that our destinations are becoming greener, and more manageable. However, when we talk to actual destination managers on the ground, they are struggling more than ever to apply these metrics in any meaningful way, or they show little understanding of destination management, even though we continually emphasize measurement, standard indicators, improvement, etc. Why does this gap exist between theory and reality? I intended to share the measurement using appropriate indicators and also experience of GSTC destination assessment because GSTC offers a global standard used for measurement. And I personally have assessed numerous destinations for sustainability over 30 years. However, I realized we needed to revisit the challenges we faced before moving on to measurement issues because the solution would be different based on what challenges you have. Therefore, let me focus on the barriers that destinations face and discuss how we can build a practical, responsible framework to bridge this divide. So let me begin with the first, maybe the perhaps most critical barrier, governance. So whenever stakeholders discuss destination sustainability, the immediate question is almost always, how do we measure or what we will measure? But we completely forget to ask a much more fundamental question. Who is responsible for measuring and managing it? Claudia mentioned this, not just what or how, who should be defined. In the real world, the vast majority of DMOs are funded, structured, and staffed as a destination marketing organization, not a management organization. So their primary KPI is to increase visitor numbers, not to monitor carrying capacity. Furthermore, a structured carrying capacity. So the structure fragment is immense. If you look at emerging destinations in Asia or other also developing countries, the DMOs is often just a marketing branch of the tourism authorities. When a global framework asks them to measure, for example, solid waste recycling rates or local water quality, they completely freeze. Why? Because they have absolutely no institutional or legal channel to speak to the municipal environmental or public works department. The data is hopelessly stranded in separate bureaucratic silos without a defined governance structure that grants authority. Indicators become useless, only numbers floating in a vacuum. So next. The second major barrier is the misalignment of evaluation indicators, which I would like to call the fit issue. Many sustainability frameworks used globally were originally developed based on highly advanced Western and metropolitan infrastructures. When these generic one-size-fits-all rubrics are copy-pasted and forced upon a small destinations or a remote rural village in Asia, in Africa, or Latin America, the entire system breaks down. For example, let's imagine a rural ecotourism village trying to comply with an indicator framework that heavily weighs the number of electric vehicle charging stations or the percentage of tourists using public mass transit. In a village with no public buses and then minimal road infrastructure, this matrix is entirely irrelevant. Yet local staff are forced to spend their extremely limited time and the energy trying to explain or track this data. Meanwhile, their actual burning crises, such as severe groundwater depletion driven by tourism, or the rapid the loss of local heritage homes being converted into generic commercial shops, those go completely unmeasured. If sustainability indicators do not align directly with these destinations' actual realities and local zoning ordinances, they degrade into a superficial compliance exercise that falls to influence municipal budgets or policy updates. So next. The third barrier is technical. Third one, yes. It's a technical and it splits into two separate problems. The first one is limited operational capacity, and then the second one is data asymmetry. We must be honest. Even when a destination has the political will to measure sustainability, they almost immediately hit a technical wall. True robust sustainability tracking demands regular, scientifically sound, the resident survey, visitor expenditure, and carbon accounting. However, the reality is that the most rural or small-scale DMOs, they're having only 2, 3, or maximum 4, 5 staff members who are already completely overwhelmed by daily administrative crisis. They do not have dedicated data analysts, nor do they possess simple automated digital tools to streamline data collection. To make matter worse, there's a severe issue of data asymmetry in our industry. We see this inconsistently in small destinations dominated by massive international all-inclusive resorts or cruise lines, while the local DMOs is manually running basic spreadsheets. Multinational corporate players hold highly sophisticated and their own data. They are using the data collection of their energy consumption, supply chains, or water uses. Because this corporate data is fiercely guarded as their own secrets, the DMO is left in the dark. They may be forced to rely on highly fragmented, voluntary self-reported data from cooperative small businesses. The final statistical output is heavily skewed, creating a deeply distorted and an inaccurate picture of a destination's actual environmental and economic footprint. So next. The fourth barrier is the complete absence of continuity in monitoring system. The speakers mentioned about, improvement in the monitoring. In the tourism sector today, we see an abundance of what I call project-based assessment, but a severe drought of continuous evaluation. So the destinations who use GDS, that's beautiful. Over time, they measure. But how many destinations are using those platforms? Let's look at a classic, highly pervasive example. The grant hunting or batch hunting cycle. a municipality or a destination decides they want to apply for a major national sustainability grant or a regional funding program, or on one-time green destination awards. To achieve this, they hire expensive external consulting firm or expert. These consultants arrive, conduct intensive studies, and produce a massive, beautifully designed 300 pages sustainability report. The destination wins the grant or secures the badge, and everyone celebrates. But what happens next? The moment the project funding terminates and the external consultants packed up and leave, all data collection immediately stops. The destination completely lacks the internal infrastructure or budget to update those metrics. 3 years later, even 2 years later, that massive report sits on a shelf gathering dust, containing completely obsolete data. The continuous feedback loop of plan, do, check, act, PDCA cycle is entirely broken, transforming sustainability management into a temporary publicity stunt rather than a permanent operational tool. So next, so how do we solve these deep systematic bottlenecks? There's no single solution, and the solution can be different, destination by destination. However, my core message to you today is built on a two-part operational framework: the global standardization paired with localized execution. The first, global frameworks such as the GSTC destination standards must be utilized as, destination's fundamental governance baseline. The global standard defines the mandatory structural elements that must be in place, from multi-stakeholder management structures to climate mitigation plans and then cultural heritage protections. However, a standard alone is not a strategy. The DMO must translate these global criteria into localized metrics, tailoring them to the destination's unique characteristics and resource capacity. True sustainability requires moving beyond passive policy adoption into active operationalization. This means setting concrete targets, systematically monitoring progress, and establishing rapid response mechanism to address emerging issues. We see this working beautifully within systems fully aligned with the GSTC framework. Truly certified sustainable destinations are not properties that have simply passed a temporary one-time test. On the contrary, the global assurance model requires them to institutionalize a permanent, continuous sustainability management system. Of course, the certification is not the goal, as Claudia mentioned, but through rigorous independent third-party assurance, we do not just verify a static set of data point numbers. We verify whether the DMO's organizational feedback loop is functionally active year after year. So this is how we move beyond generic compliance. This is how we ensure that measurement ceases to be an administrative burden and instead becomes a highly responsive mechanism, one that drives long-term positive outcomes for the host community and secure the destination's future. Actually, now GSTC, we are revising global destination standard. So far, we have 38 criteria and 174 indicators. So we are talking about indicators. So please join the public consultation. We just started the second public consultation. So please provide your input to have really practical, measurable indicators, so many destinations to use that as a basis. And then over time, they also can monitor their progress. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mihi. It was very interesting to hear from a representative from the global standard institution that proposed to move to use global standard, but move to destination specific and place-based type of indicator based on the challenges that each indicator actually face. Today, I saw that the second round of consultation for indicator from GSTC for destination. So I share with some of my colleagues, and definitely we will try to contribute and add some input, because at the moment we are working to develop some place-based indicator for some local government, not DM, or local government in destination in Australia. So I think will be good platform to contribute to this one. Okay. Next presenter is Professor Graham Miller. Graham is Rodrigo Guimaraes. I don't know if it's correct, my pronunciation or not. Professor of Sustainable Business at Nova School of Business and Economics, Lisbon, and Academic Director of Westmont Institute of Tourism and Hospitality. Graham is the former Pro-Vice Chancellor at the University of Surrey, UK, where he had university-level responsibility for sustainability and employability, and was also Executive Dean of Faculty of Art and Social Sciences. Graham is consistently listed among top 1% global scientists in the world, and has recognized by the Academy of Social Science for impact of his research on society. Graham's ability to balance academic rigor with industry needs is demonstrated by previous role as a lead judge for World Travel and Tourism Council's Tourism for Tomorrow Award, and co-editor of Journal of Sustainable Tourism, one of the leading journal in sustainable tourism for a long time. Graham, over to you.
Great, thank you very much. So I'm just going to share a few thoughts once I can share my screen. Let me just get that going. Continue to share, and then what do I have to do? Use slideshow, is that it? Is that going now? Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so the advantage of going last is of course that that my colleagues have said have made many of the points that that are important to make. But so I thought I'd just share a few thoughts and a few reflections. This has been a topic of work that I've been involved in. My PhD was on developing a set of indicators. That was back in 2000. And then with Louise Twining Ward, we published the first book on this in 2005. And then probably the other big piece of work was about 10 years ago now, actually, the European Tourism Indicator System, the ETIS system that we developed and then published. So if I just sort of reflect on ETIS, and some of the things, so for those that don't know, this was a European Union funded project. It was a big project. They spent a lot of money. It was great for my career. But ultimately they decided to discontinue the program. And so just sort of reflecting back on, well, why was that? Why didn't they continue this system? Because we developed here a European-wide system for them on indicators that had many of the things that Claudia, Mihi, and Anna talked about, with the sort of core set of indicators, the supplementary set of indicators you could adjust by destination. And so there's a set of sort of reflections there, and I keep sort of adding to that, I guess, over the years, but people have already spoken to those. the lack of skills, connectedness, people's sort of lack of comfort collecting the indicators, subjective, objective indicators. That sort of reliance of a champion to drive this through is often important in a destination. You need somebody to really grab hold of this and make it happen. And yet the one that perhaps I'm struck with the most that doesn't often get picked up and didn't really get picked up in the presentations prior to this is this lack of political support or this lack of media coverage or sort of wider engagement. And if we think about indicators that do get reported commonly in the news, things like Earth Overshoot Day, that always gets published every year, the day of the year when we've exceeded the Earth's regenerative capabilities. And so we see that day of the year gets earlier every year. So we know that we're burning into Earth's resources quicker and quicker through time. There's one that always gets published in the UK, which is the day of the year that the average Financial Times 100 CEO has earned more than the average UK salary. And this is usually by about the 10th of January. They've earned more in the first 10 days of the year than the average person in the UK earns for the entire year. And again, you can see that getting earlier and earlier in the year. And so these things do get reported, and yet ETIS got cut. And when I reflect on it, I think it's because ETIS was a good system, but it was pretty boring. The indicators that we developed were pretty boring and they were pretty dry, and media were not banging on the door of the EU saying, where are the data for this? We want to report them. And I think in the absence of that, it becomes easier for these schemes to sort of fall off the table and become less important, and therefore potentially be things that can be cut. My colleague Catherine Trebeck, who's at Edinburgh University, she talks about the indicator of girls on bikes as a great indicator of sustainability in general. And she says it's a great indicator because it captures a number of really important things all in one measurement. It covers, is it safe cycling, safe transport systems? It covers people's attitude to health. It covers gender equality, all wrapped up in one. And it's an interesting, fun indicator to be measuring. She also talks about, instead of measuring cars on the road, which is hard for us to conceptualize, she talks about measuring how long it takes to drop my kids off at school. Because ultimately what I'm interested in is how long it takes me to drop my kids off at school. I don't care how many cars are on the road. If you can have twice as many cars on the road, but it still takes me the same amount of time to drop my kids off at school, fine, have twice as many cars on the road. But if my commute time doubles with half the number of cars on the road because it's being badly managed, then I'm angry with that. So cars on the road is not the key indicator. How long it takes me to drop my kids off at school is the key indicator for me. And so just thinking more creatively, more imaginatively about our indicators so that they get public interest, media interest, so that the media is asking for these data rather than us reporting what we think is important as academics, as scientists, as policymakers. So that's, I think, one of the sort of key reflections. And so coming to the conclusion of what are we trying to achieve that measurement will help us with, rather than measuring for the sake of measuring. But what is it? What's the problem that we've got that data will help us with? And Claudia, you mentioned the work with Exeter, and that I know was with Gloria. Gloria was my PhD student with Javier, and we did this study as part of her PhD work on South Sardinia, and looked at the way that they were using indicators, because they had implemented the ETIS system, the way that they'd implemented ETIS. And there was almost no evidence, and Anna talked about in the absorptive capacity of destinations, almost no evidence that they had a problem, collected data, created a solution to the problem, implemented a solution to the problem. It just didn't work like that. And that sort of fallacy of data-driven decisions is a fallacy. It doesn't work like that. And what Gloria identified was that the indicators, though, were useful because it added to this overall level of literacy in the destination. It added to an overall level of understanding of sustainability, that when they were facing all decisions, they had a better baseline understanding of sustainability. And so for me, it's how do we improve engagement? How do we improve literacy? How do we improve engagement with sustainability? And one of the big problems that I see, and I'm just going to go on a little bit of a tangent here, but one of the problems I see is this huge disconnect that humans have to nature. Increasingly, we're disconnected from nature. This was a paper that was published in Nature, in the journal Nature. And it showed it was a big meta review of studies on people's connection with nature. And it showed across the vast majority of those that were becoming disconnected from nature. And that's because of increasing urbanization of our lives, increasing screen time, the actual loss of nature. There's less nature to connect with, and less environmental education at school. And so the more we disconnect, we spiral, because then we care about nature less. Therefore, I'm less likely to change my behavior. Oops. Yeah, so what's happened there? And so this was another study that was done that showed that the less time we spend in nature, then the worse my pro-environmental behavior, my attitudes are, and so the worse my pro-environmental behavior is. And so again, the more disconnected we are from nature, the less likely we are to do anything to save it and to protect it. So it feels to me that the problem that we want in indicators and measurement to help fix is to connect people with nature, is to connect people with sustainability at a human level, not at a policy officer level, not at a government level, but at a human level. We need our work to connect people with nature. And for nature, we can think about the loneliness problem and social anxiety problem. So there's a social equivalent of this as well as an environmental equivalent. So just as a thought, I've been sort of looking more at the idea of citizen science, because I guess my thinking is that politics is pretty broken, and we need different policies. Well, we're not going to have the same people make different policies. We need different people if we're going to have different policies. So different people making decisions are probably going to need different data. So we need to think about this in a fundamentally different way. And Mihi asked the question, I think, of who makes the decision. And I would argue that increasingly this needs to shift to people. And we see DMOs increasingly moving to a much more citizen-led form of engagement that really decenters tourism, decenters government, certainly decenters business. And if it's going to decenter that, then we need people to be more centralized, and they will need data, they will need scientific literacy, they will need education. And so we see some of these examples of citizen science, whether that's connecting tourists to sustainability or local population. And I was struck by this a few weeks ago. I was in the Azores and went out whale watching. We took a field trip of students to the Azores, and there were 10 boats a day went out whale watching, with about 20 or more people on each boat. 200 tourists going out every day whale watching. And there was a scientific team from the local university that they were there, and they were struggling to send their boat out one day per week, and there was 4 of them. And so if you look at just the imbalance of resources there, we can train the tourists to collect the data. They can collect far more data than the scientists who are out there. Scientists have a problem with this, and I say this as a scientist, but if we can train tourists, if we can train local people as I walk along my beach every morning to identify things I should be looking for, then we create an army of people who can collect data. And there's lots of examples of this. So this was a report that we just did with Travel by B Corp in the UK. But the Long Run has done work on this. This is whale watching again, or Antarctic, with the Polar Collective. And PADI, the scuba diving organization, has just launched a module, a course that you can go on that teaches you what to look for, and that you can record this. And so this, it slightly gamifies it, but it engages the customer, engages the community in a way that collects data. Because I think we, just as a final comment, we have a real example of what happens when when residents get left out of the decision-making process. It's not about resident satisfaction. I think for years we've been measuring the wrong concept. I think it's about resident engagement. It's a sense of autonomy. It's a sense of, am I in control of my own life? I accept as an adult there are things that I'm not happy about, but I find it really difficult to accept there are things I'm not in control of. And I think when you look at some of the protests in Tenerife, in Barcelona, in Amsterdam, it was not that people were unhappy, it's that people had a sense that they were not in control. And I think measuring data, being part of the solution, is a way of helping people feel a sense of agency in this process. So I'll leave it there. There's a collection of thoughts that we can maybe pick up on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Graham. Very interesting viewpoint to conclude presentation in this webinar, and start some discussion around the presentation and main topic, that is sustainability indicator for destination. I had a few questions. In the chat box also we have some question, but through presentation and very smooth process that we started from Anna to discuss about and focusing on learning process in indicator, and presentation by Claudia and then me, some barriers of indicators in destination, and at the end, Graham. So I decided to actually change direction of question and discussion and ask a big question. What is the role of indicators? The role of indicator is measuring, informing decision-making, creating a learning process, improving literacy about sustainability and sustainable development and sustainability of destination. What's the role of destination from your perspective? So any of you can go first and followed by others.
I mean,
Anna, you want to go first? Okay, Graham, you want to go first?
Sorry, just I've got my microphone open. I mean, I think it's all of those things, Mustafa, potentially. The indicators can do all of those things. I think the key thing is that we start with a problem and we understand that indicators are a potential answer to that problem. What you see too much, I think, is people that start with the indicator, start measuring without really a clear idea of what or why they're measuring. And, and I'm sure all of my colleagues see these papers submitted to journals, and Jafar will know better than anybody. You see these papers, academic papers that get submitted, that have developed a whole set of indicators. but they're not connected to a problem. So I don't know what we're collecting information for. And it's a very sort of science-driven approach to indicators. So I think indicators are a tool. They can do all of those things that you identified. We've just got to be clear about why we're doing it rather than just for the sake of it.
Anyone else want to continue?
Yeah, I was about to say quite similar to Graham's intervention. So I would say that destinations right now are mainly focused on collecting data and developing these dashboards with a lot of information. So we have a clear idea about how to use indicators for problem definition stage, but we have to evolve the sustainable tourism indicator to other approaches. So as Graham introduced, we need indicators for supporting problem solving and also indicators for policy evaluation. So I think we have to evolve from indicators as being an end to have indicators to be designed around specific management objectives and policy questions. So we can support problem solving based on the indicators. And also we have to ensure that the evidence generation is closely linked to real world challenges. And they have to be also actionable solutions rather than simply produce data. So I think, yeah, so we have to make the most from all these different approaches or different needs for the indicators.
If I add, I agree
Yes,
with Graham and Anna, it's all correct. But from the standard perspective, standard is, the group of criteria, and then criteria is supported by indicators. So when we talked about resident or community engagement, how we will measure community engagement or visitor engagement. So very measurable, the tool, it's a written tool, that's the indicator. But indicators can be used at different purposes. Just, okay, when we, the measure, we can see some certain level of sustainability. Or is through the measurement by indicators, we can decide some of the policies. So it's different the purposes, but the basically indicators means the something we want to, I guess, the specific measurable the things in a written the expression. So that's the indicators.
To add,
yes, Claudia.
Sorry,
You want
to add, and
Yeah,
more
yeah.
from the practical perspective, we have seen I agree with what all the colleagues have said. They are tools, they are not the end point. And the key is what is the purpose of using. And we have seen this in the practice within the index. We have some destinations like Montreal. They started with using the indicators because they wanted to know where they were, what was their baseline, what were the gaps that they had, and from there they start looking into which action they would like to take for next steps. Then we have other destinations like Belfast, for example, that they have been for the past 5 years within the index, and they already have that baseline. So they wanted to continue with the indicators as tools to look into very specific actions to address key challenges in their destination. So it's more about, as Graham says, why the destination is using that, why they want to use the indicators. Others want to address the challenge of community engagement. That's one of the criteria that we also cover in the index, and we have seen destinations really targeting into actions for that to address that challenge in their own area or biodiversity strategy and how to deal with that.
Thank you very much. From here, I would like to ask another question. You refer to always when you want to discuss about destination, you refer to someone they want who is responsible for measuring sustainability of destination. And he mentioned that DMO has different role and meaning in different contexts. In Australia, DMOs are only destination marketing organization, and they have very low authority for managing tourism in destination. And managing tourism, I know in other countries, we have similar situation. So we are very fragmented for planning and managing of destination. Local government has some role, city council and local government, DMO in some country has some role, state government, national government, other department. Who should manage the process of sustainability measurement, apply indicator, and be responsible for indicator based on your experience and vast experience in different countries and also in academia?
I can go first. I don't think there's a unique answer, and it shouldn't be, because it depends on the context. We have destination management organizations, destination marketing organizations. There are others that are destination management and marketing organizations. And we have also seen in the index other organizations like the Convention Business Bureau that lead this sustainability change and sustainability journey. So this will vary depending on the context, on the region. If we go to Latin America, then you might not find a specific destination management organization within a destination. Probably it's just one person within the municipality that cover all the sustainability in the tourism, for tourism. So I think it depends the region, and we need to go with that.
Anyone else want to add to this question?
What we measure is different. As I mentioned, DMOs, like I said, their scope of the management is limited. So most tourism DMO, they do not manage water quality or waste water, even solid waste. But that's why we really emphasize the whole government approach. So the DMO's role is coordinating. So they do not do by themselves, but they collect the data. If there's any issues, they talk to, the responsible, the agency or body. So they actively the lead problem solving, because that's the negatively impact on community or environment. It can be also the visitor issues, but those the tourism relevant, the measurement is by DMO, or we are talking about the community environment in the measurement, so they can do that. But again, DMO is coordinating through the governance. So different destinations can have the different approaches. There is the single types of DMO. The Western world and Asian world is different, So I personally can see many different types of DMOs. For example, my country in Korea, we don't have a private sector DMO. Basically, DMO, all the government agencies, but they have some kind of the private the DMO, but their responsibilities are limited. So back to your question, the measurement, what we measure, that's they decide who are responsible for. But DMO should be aware of and then coordinate.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me read some question from the chat. So I saw some of you respond to the question in the chat. Thank you very much. So some of the question actually have already been somehow answered. There is a question here from Anna. To what extent do you think the dominance of a growth-oriented mindset in tourism sector compromise sustainability goal when market demand for tourism product is evident? should firms self-regulate and restrain expansion, or it's the governance of growth more appropriately the responsibility of government through formal regulatory mechanism? I don't know, is clear or...
Yeah, so I guess that we are discussing again about the growth-oriented prevalent mindset when we do policy making. And so I don't believe that right now we have to break heavily the patterns that we have, but we have to introduce some ideas and to better introduce data in our daily work when we are planning and managing sustainability. So this is first steps to advance and to change these mindsets. And obviously, so for me, the problem is that mainly we all talk about sustainability, but then when we have to confront or to apply the sustainability to change the growth mindset, then sustainability is not so important. So we have plenty of planning and policies with the idea of sustainability, but then the actions are less ambitious. So here is not that easy, obviously, but I think indicators can help to create this culture of evidence-informed decision making, which is very necessary to advance this this problem, no? And I think also that we have the problem with the governance, because we have the data. The data is really fragmented, and the data is produced in different territorial levels by different stakeholders, and it's difficult to make an efficient governance to translate this data into actions if we don't coordinate these different levels and stakeholders. And also we have the problem about who has the power to change things, no? And I will say that the responsibility is shared about different stakeholders, and not only in our sector. So I think Claudia talked about that. Also, we cannot manage sustainability just from our sector. So we have to work with other departments. We have to break silos in order to better coordinate the governance of sustainability, not just in our sector, but in a more, or with a more overall approach in the destination. So I guess this will be the future of the indicators, to introduce in sustainable tourism indicators in a broader approach when we plan and manage destinations, not just on a sector.
Thank you very much, Anna. I believe Graham has other meeting at 2:30 UK time. Am I correct?
I'm afraid I've brought my Northern European punctuality to the webinar.
Oh, okay.
Apologies, but so I'm going to have to go, I'm afraid. But thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So we will continue just for one or two more questions, and then we'll wrap up the webinar. So if you have to go, yeah, I think Graham needed to go. So there are some questions in the chat. Just let me ask one of them as the last question. Reflecting on sustainable governance, for example, specifically for coastal and marine destination, how can we make sure to have an efficient set of indicators that contrast technical deficit and governance crisis and break silos, especially reflection on the goal of blue economy? Anyone wants to answer this question?
So I can just give some insights about that. I guess I missed that the first step is to define clearly what are the political aims and what kind of tourism development we want to achieve with our policies. And then this is what we were discussing previously. And in fact, you Professor Mostafa said that Claudia and I had different approaches to the number of indicators needed to advance in the policy making. And I would say that in fact we are quite aligned, because Claudia was talking about these different levels of development, and I think this is the first approach to work or to cope to decide the indicators, what kind of indicators, and to what level or number of indicators we need for start using them. So I guess so the first that we have to think when we want to introduce sustainability in our policy making, also when we are trying to promote this kind of blue tourism, I think it was the question, a new tourism development, we have to fight against the paralysis on action. And this is the main problem that I think we have when we try to use sustainability indicators to guide our tourism management or development. So the problem is that if we don't have enough data, or we don't have the perfect data, we don't do anything about sustainability because we don't feel confident enough to do something. No, so I think this is why I said first we have to start with a small but policy relevant set of indicators. So I was talking about this first stage that Claudia explained in his presentation. So destinations that start producing data, sustainability data, they have to start with a very clear, relevant set of indicators for their policy aims. And I think this is the first step. They can start doing things in sustainability. And then if they advance in these stages that Claudia said, they can increase the number of indicators, they can make the decisions more complex, and they can improve their actions and their strategy based on more data. No, but for me, the problem is that, or what I want to highlight is that we don't need a really extensive and complex list of indicators or perfect data to start working towards sustainability. We can start small and then go bigger.
Thank you very much. Any final word from the panel? Actually, I had a question that what the next generation of sustainable tourism indicator should look like, but I don't ask this question. Just, just if you have any final words, so we'll pass to the organizer, Prof. Jafari and Fadari to conclude. Yeah.
I think the next generation to look to the future, I think we need to look what we already have. We have many frameworks and many indicators, and rather than reinvent the wheel, I think we first look to what we already have and identify which of those that already exist and have been done through a really deep work and development and stakeholder involvement, see which of those are relevant for the destination, depending on their priorities, depending on their resources. So I think that should be the future, depending priorities, what already exists and can be adapted to the destination. And we have seen that also in the index with a specific criteria that is evolving year by year. We do review and figure out if destinations provide input on what criteria, what indicator is no longer relevant or should be improved or not. And I think that that's the essence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mihi?
Yeah, the 2 years ago, I assessed the Phuket, Thailand, the sustainability assessment, and then there were young, the local leaders. They are all the businessmen, but they really dedicated to make Phuket sustainable. So of course they have a lot of challenges, and I asked them, you grown up in a rich family, they have actually really a lot of their properties they have. So why are you doing this job? And why do your foundation support to this destination assessment? One young gentleman said, I was born and grown up here. My Phuket was different from now. We can see I married and then I'm waiting for my baby, but I cannot leave if my Phuket do not change, in a sustainable way. I will leave. So I want to make my Phuket for, my children. So it was really touching. We have to take action, So no longer we have to discuss what we will measure. It should be there. Measurement was it's just given. So academics, if when I go to the destinations, even they do not know how to measure satisfaction of visitors or residents, and then they do not know how to measure visitors' expenditures. So even the methodology, the tools, we need to, we already know many things, and then just provide all the destinations that can, the use as just a free tool. So that's I'd like to make. And then the sustainability is just a journey. There's no stop. So we continually have to review ourselves and then do something now.
Thank you very much. And now you want to add a final word?
Yeah, just very briefly, I agree with my colleagues have said. So just to say that I think that we have to go farther than simply generate more data and try to focus on make sustainable tourism in more indicators more actionable. And I think then that we have to focus on get sustainable tourism indicator more policy oriented and socially legitimized. And we have to promote them and to define them based on participatory process. And also we have to get them fully integrated into planning and decision-making systems.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank all the panel members for very insightful presentation and discussion, and also Scott Webinar for providing this opportunity for us to discuss this important topic, and all those who attended and asked questions and participated in the conversation. Thank you very much. Over to you, Dr. Kazem. And
Thank
sorry
you.
for taking a bit more time that we
No, no.
actually have given.
Excellent. Thank you very much. As expected, I myself have a lot of takeout lessons. I have some questions too, but to utilize the time wisely, let me ask our Professor Cooper, rapporteur, to wrap up. And then we have also Professor Jafari, who does the comprehensive and difficult job of conclusion remarks. He always asks me to say, don't say conclusion, just say conclusion remarks. And then maybe I can throw my questions also before or in between two of them that make their job more difficult. Malcolm?
Yep, I'm here.
So, how do
Okay.
you start it off?
Okay, thanks everybody for the things that you've talked about, the thoughts you've given us, and the stress on your dissatisfaction with indicators that we currently have. The title says it all, Beyond Metrics. For me, what I found in the presentation was that there's a landscape of current metrics and a desire to move to new ones. We want to move away from the checklist compliance type metric, which basically doesn't do a lot. Just simply tick the box and you'll be sustainable, or you'll be whatever. We need to decouple the volume from the value. We want value to be written into metrics, not how many tons of carbon you might save, but what does it mean for the community? We need to look at the eco-efficiency that people claim for metrics, and you did that extremely well. You also wanted to move on to things that I would call the limits of acceptable change, which is better than carrying capacity. Carrying capacity is devalued, but the limits to acceptable change is the important way to look at it these days. We look at also, you need to bring the entire community into the process. Having been a city planner for many years, I know that's one of the hardest things you can possibly do. There's always somebody out there saying, you didn't consider my feelings on this matter. But that's what we need to do. We need to say, well, look, indicators that we have, or the metrics that we have, don't exist in a vacuum. They're not academic, just because somebody wants to know the paper. They're not just corporate, but they are socio-political in the community. So our new approach, that seems to be coming out of what you said, was basically that we need to look at net positive impact. Try and work out a way of focusing on indicators that track whether tourism actively restores an area. Regenerative tourism is the new buzzword, but we've been looking for a way of trying to develop net positive impact from tourism, including the total economy and the total community. And then resident first. The metrics need to be from the community, not at the community. So thank you very, very much for a very stimulating discussion on this matter. As I said, I've been a city planner for a long time as well as an academic, and that really is the biggest problem that you face. How to develop a community and how to have it all talking the same way on the same subject. So how do we build that? And that should be the question for the next Scott webinar in this process. How do we actually build adequate metrics? The old ones are not working. You've said so and described this. What are the new ones? And Jafar will tell you a few about the local community. I'm sure he will, because that's where it's all at. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Malcolm. So let me also add something to make Jafar's job more difficult, and I'm sure everybody will be happy to benefit from that. I think Anna, Claudia, me, and Graham, they all together brought a very comprehensive concept, and they maybe redefined, at least to me, that the meaning of measurement. Not only measuring and analyzing, but also as a part of the development process and as an education process that community need to develop measurement, and by developing their measurement, they also develop the community. And as our presenters mentioned, the continuity is also a community act of sustainable development of the community. And as me mentioned, who should measure? Yes, it matters. It really matters that who measure, and it really doesn't matter that a small number and very deep, or a long list or checklist that Malcolm mentioned. It's all about that to continue long process of measurement that involve community, make them more sensitive to what is changing, and they decide why they want change, or they should not let it change, and to manage it. So the measurement system is an asset. In my personal experience in Japan, in terms of rural tourism, I've seen some small destinations that are well organized in terms of measurement. They have a, a long history of database, data collection and management, and in the same country, some destinations they don't have it. So without data and without measurement, there is no accurate management. So to support the community with technical advice, or if let's say from academia is going to be supported, the community should be developed in terms of the measurement development. They have to take the main role of providing these insight and information to enable the community resources to be managed well. So a lot of insight in the concept of measurement, thanks to Dr. Mustafa and his brilliant team. So let me pass it on to Jafar for the final and conclusion remarks. Jafar, as usual, this is your turn.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Mustafa and team for a wonderful job. And my job is now to summarize the summaries, because Malcolm gave a summary, comprehensive one, and then yours was added to it, Qasim. Therefore, I'm going to depart from summaries. I took 2 pages of notes, so I'm not going to repeat those, and I want to go somewhere else with my ideas. So I'm changing my plans now. To me, if I fade away the discussion we had and pay no attention to the details of it, it's all about formation of knowledge, how we create knowledge, how we refine knowledge, how we improve knowledge. And we went as far as saying how to apply knowledge. And that is where we stopped. In other words, we are writing excellent articles which deals with the body of knowledge, documented very well, etc., etc. But then I submit it to a journal, it's published in a journal, then it stays in that bubble called literature. Somebody else goes in this bubble, quotes me, and I quote you, and this bounces back and forth, and that creates citation index. But the industry, which is supposed to be the recipient of the knowledge, are 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 they're stayed out. Not that they choose to stay out. We don't speak their language. Our papers are too thick, too theoretical, uh, too detailed. These days, you don't find an article which is only 5,000 words, or 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 words. They don't have time to read it. So for that reason, I became myself. It has nothing to do with the panel. It's just I told you I'm going somewhere else with my remarks. I was frustrated that I have been frustrated that the body of knowledge is growing, 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 and it's going nowhere. The industry, who is supposed to be the recipient of it, is not tapping on it. So I started something which is called Tourism Intelligence Forum, and now it has a magazine, not journal, a magazine that takes your articles, or you take your articles, and you say what the situation is, and here is the resolution. This is how to deal with it. And this we do in 500 words. Industry people have time to read 500 words. So here I invite you to 2 things. One, I would like to invite this panel to have another reunion, and in that second panel, talk about the transfer of knowledge from academia to the industry. Some people call it translation of knowledge. It doesn't matter. So I invite you to have a session on transfer of knowledge. And I also invite you to publish your article if it has application in our magazine, which is called The Bridge. The bridge intent means the bridge between academia and the industry. I will put the reference, Kazim, I pass it down to you so you can add it to the wherever you want to add it, so if they want to have access to it. So, like other fields of studies, I think we should wake up and say, is the are the audience of our audience are using the knowledge or not? In medicine, they are. Research and application go hands in hands. In engineering, they are. Research and application go hands in hands. In tourism, it goes like that. So this is my new mission, by the way, and I hope you can join forces with us to bring theory and practice together for a better tourism practice and industry. Thank you.
Thank you,
We can
Jafar.
write the short article from this panel for the bridge.
By all means.
Yeah, and because we had combination of both practice and academia, so we can write and send to you, Prof. Jafar.
Yeah, Mustafa, I read the bios of all of you, and you in your bios use the word applied, uh, uh, actionable research, serving the tourism industry. But the panel discussion was more information of knowledge and refinement of knowledge, but not dishing it out to the industry. So I'm proposing that we have a panel which is dishing out the knowledge to the industry and policymakers, both.
Thank you very much, Jafar. I think this subject of this webinar is exactly what you are saying, indicators. So for indicators, and the job of indicators are bridging the theory and practice. I remember when I was very young, I had this book, the Green Book of UNWTO of the sustainability indicators, having it to modify it for my own case studies, which means going through the list, pick up the most relevant items, and talk to community members and make sure they understand and they can utilize it. So yes, indicator is something that connect theory and practice in the field. But we need more of them, and we need to make sure that the community or the industry are happy with it and use it. Thank you so much. With this comprehensive panel discussion and conclusion, we could not conclude the metrics and it. So as Jafar mentioned, Professor Mustafa and your team, you are invited again to continue, but this time maybe more focused and in one aspect of the indicators. Also, maybe you can design a series of talk in this subject. I would like to thank all speakers, and we learned a lot. And special thanks to people who are watching us on YouTube also. I'm sure the Scott admin, they copied the questions and the comments from YouTube chat to Zoom, and the questions are also available on our YouTube channel. We have a database also on the library of Scott that is available for everybody to watch. Over 120 videos are available. Scott, video library is yours. And also my colleagues from Scott team are going to send a message in the chat that if you want to cite the Scott webinars, how to do that. So for a while, people have been asking that how we can cite this. They know how to cite, as Jafar mentioned, a journal article or other works, but it is a bit unusual to cite a webinar in the work. So if you want to cite Scott, you can see how you can do that with this style that is in the chat. It's end of my notes, Jafar, and everybody. Thank you very much again, and we hope to see you again in the next Scott webinars. We have one webinar every month, and it is our 6th year. So we are very happy to serve you again soon. Have a good evening, and
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.